someone sent me the link to the Doodles and Dragons thing, and that's where I got it from. But I mean, someone sent it in for me. You're probably gonna have to sit straight when he gets here.
Yeah.
Write something on the tablet thing and put it up. And see how easy it is to read.
Is it okay?
There's light.
Like right on it. Yeah. We need to get some like those professional stage lights with the umbrellas.
What if I put it here? Can you see it?
That's better. That's perfect.
This is good?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you can read it fine. It's just the big lights. Big lights on them. There's a little bit of glare.
Yeah.
Or if you want to just probably go really close with it. Okay. Turn on.
Kill the background noise. This one will actually be fun for me because I've actually been starting a game on the Pathfinder thing, so I've been having to try and balance encounters recently. Oh, sweet. I remembered to grab the right shirt today. By accident.
You remember to put on a shirt today?
Well, no, I was gonna plan on wearing one of my D&D shirts. This is actually from...
I normally do too. I didn't today though.
Yeah, it's from a podcast I used to listen to from 4E. This was the artificer of the group. It's my favorite character by far.
I think it's cool that we already got a little sponsor.
Yeah.
Bubby said on Twitch to send it to that, I don't know what it's called, like tabletop talk shows or something like that. He said link it to us, link us to them.
Under playing. One word? Talk show. It's not coming up. Tabletop. There's tabletop simulator tabletop. That's why it's hard because
I'll get it. I'll get it 1 second.
Yeah, it's meant for games, so I usually just do Dungeons and Dragons on there.
Can you not just type in a custom thing?
No.
Oh, that sucks.
Well, I guess you could, but nobody would.
Oh,
There's no way to really.
In the title, just do Tabletop RPG Now and just say, like in parentheses, general tabletop talk or general RPG talk. That'll help. Like if people see it on the Dungeons and Dragons things, then they can like make it easier for them to pick it out because they can look at it and say, okay, it's general RPG, so it may not specifically apply to D&D.
We've got 1 minute.
Say something.
Testing 1 2 3.
Testing.
Say something.
Testing 1 2 3.
Yeah, that's good.
Sweet.
Ready?
Yeah.
Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to Tabletop RPG Now. I'm your host, Dallas, as always, with
Corey.
We have a guest today. One of the guys from our normal talked about Saturday game.
Who are you?
Who am I? I am this strange person, this mystical being. No, I'm John. Nice to meet you guys.
So we're back. This is the show where the old, evolved, legendary player killer dungeon master represents all you dungeon masters out there as we fight vehemently to put down and oppress all the dreams of these would-be heroes and whatever else they're playing. I represent the dungeon masters, and Corey is whatever you people are. He's your representative. He's on your team. No, but this is the show where we go back and forth, and sometimes we go head to head. So when you want to argue with your dungeon master about something and you want another's opinion, send your information in, your questions into Corey or myself if you're on the dungeon master side, and we're going to do the best we can to try to remedy your problems. That's what we do here, right?
No.
Dude.
We just complicate things and
That's what we're supposed to do here.
We overtalk it.
We brought John in because we felt like the PC side needed a little bit extra experience, but collectively it doesn't really work. But seriously, guys, today we're going to talk about something that seems to be an issue no matter what setting you're in, what edition you're in, or what game you're playing. It's a very complicated topic, and it's encounters, right?
Yep.
Mm-hmm. So when we talk about encounters, guys, most of you are thinking skeletons, ghouls, zombies. What comes to your mind, John, when you think of encounters?
Well, I have a little more experience in it, but yes, the typical thing I think about is a lot of combat encounters. Mm-hmm. But personally, some of the things I find most rewarding are actually the skill encounters because it makes the player think.
There you go. What about you, Corey?
Yeah, and most of my experience, most encounters have been combat. But as a gamer, I do know that encounters is all encompassing, or else they just call it you have combat today.
Right.
It's an encounter for a reason. Encounters can be combat, they can be puzzles, they can be NPC conversations, they can be hurdles you have to overcome. It can be anything. It's just something that your party has to do
right.
in that situation.
So talking about encounters, old 80s dungeon master that survived the 90s when tabletop almost died. One of the things that really makes an encounter stand out, and we're going to get to the more intricate things, but to me, when Corey first joined our Saturday game, the first encounter that I believe you were a part of was the ogre mages, right? Mm-hmm. And so what really made that encounter, I think, stand out for Corey was, in my opinion, it was probably the terrain, the atmospheric setting versus the actual baddies, right?
Yeah, it was in the desert. It was like freezing cold at night, and we were on sand dunes, so there was a lot of height differences in the battle. Okay,
so let's talk about a few things he said. What stuck out to you, John,
when he wasn't there?
When I wasn't there, I've heard so many overviews because of that was the one section that
based on what he just said. What stands out to you in that combat?
To me specifically is the height differences, because I've seen a lot of DMs try to overcome that, and I have yet to see. Well, I will say there are a couple of times when I've seen it done well, but height differences usually tend to make any combat trouble for both the players and the DM.
Very well put. So what really made that combat different or unique, or probably stand out to Corey, was before combat started, they had to deal with the cold of the desert at night, right? So we had to deal with the cold, and you guys had the advantageous position.
Yeah.
You guys actually snuck up on the ogre mages, or got to the ogre mages from the top position, looking down on them. So, for you DMs out there, your bad guys shouldn't be the only ones ever getting surprise rounds. in this case, the group had the decision whether they could try to sneak around them. Maybe the ogre may just had something they needed. Maybe they could try to talk to them. But if they tried to talk to them or sneak around them, they're giving up that one chance they have at an advantageous attack. And I can hold true to my group that they're going to kill them, right? But the point is, they dealt with several things before the encounter ever started. And when the encounter ever started, there was dunes. I know 5e is based on advantage disadvantage a lot, but in things like height differences, when someone's got the high ground, there's nothing stopping you from +1 -1 right there. I don't think a full advantage disadvantage is needed. Do you feel like in that encounter the height differences was worked out pretty fair?
Yeah, it was. I think the way that you've done the height differences is very similar. I guess to say like BattleTech was similar in that way, where you're kind of behind cover, depending on how close you are to the height difference. Like, so if you have a cliff here and you're right here, you're obviously not going to be able to see up here. But if you're out here, then maybe you can see there.
Exactly. And that's pretty much it. So, moving on from encounters, as far as physical combat, one thing stuck out to me in 4E that I saw one time, and it was really funny. There were these two undead zombie types. What do you guys think about when you think of zombies? Newbies.
Zombies, depending on the source, I come up with two distinct images.
Okay.
The image from culture today, pop culture, the virus spawned zombie, which to me is nowhere near as scary as the magic spawned zombie of most role-playing games. Specifically being, I started in 3rd edition playing, and the scariest thing that I ever had to fight was a wight. Because it could literally suck away all your hard-earned levels just by hitting you.
A lot of undead could do that back in the day.
It was not a fun thing to fight.
Corey, what do you think of it, zombies, man?
I think of like the slow retarded
Walking Dead.
Yeah, the slow retarded things that just eat whatever's in front of them.
I'm really glad you said that. Eat whatever's in front of you. So what was I talking about? 4th edition, right? There was an encounter, a standard encounter that was built that you were supposed to be able to use as a mechanically sound encounter. And the encounter was, I want to say it was 3 zombies, and it almost looked like I forget the name of it. It was a small dinosaur that like launched fireballs, or like small, like not full-fledged fireballs, but like small, like plates of fire at you, and it was like a burst 1 fire. It was like a 1d6 damage each. Mechanically, it was a pretty fair encounter for the level it said. The problem is, why are these zombies walking with this thing? Why wouldn't they just eat it? So you have to make sure that your encounters make sense too, okay? Because you want to make sure that in physical encounters that you don't have elves and orcs working together unless there's a reason. They typically don't like each other. Elves and drow, dwarves and Durgar. If the things don't make sense, it just doesn't make sense. And so if you're focused on a mechanical fair encounter, you're gonna miss a lot of the story. Like, you're gonna miss a lot of the game. You're gonna mess a lot of that up from the DM perspective.
With the caveat being that if you're using kind of unique takes on whatever you're using, that's cool. If you're drow or buddy with whoever,
sure,
that's fine. Just be consistent with that. Like, don't say, oh, well, my undead are smart, and then next session have the classic old school dead undead. If your undead are smart, your undead are smart, and they're always going to be that way.
I'm gonna ask John a question. So we're gonna say before I ask John the question, we're gonna say, rest in peace to Leonique. Rest in peace to Leonique, a very old character from the Saturday game. Passed away last session.
Yeah.
So
was it last session? I thought it was the session
before. So he passed away. So we're gonna say rest in peace to the legendary werewolf. Um, but he was a really cool character. A lot of cool story. But to my question, my question to you, John, is in your time playing Dungeons and Dragons, and I believe you're in a Pathfinder game too. What is your what has been your favorite encounter?
I think that has got to be... Darn. There are a lot of good ones from the Saturday game. I'm just saying. I think it would actually have to be when we had just gone underground. We were looking for some of the blood from his world, and we found this great old elemental that saved us by turning us into partial elementals.
Okay.
And through that, we were able to venture farther into these caves that were very, very badly cursed. Think of walking through a nuclear radiation field. Basically, we were able to walk through there. The fight in particular, though, was we were trying to figure out a way. We found a dead end in a cave, and we were trying to dig our way out. And all of a sudden, what was it? Umber Hulks, I think?
Mm-hmm.
Umber Hulks just came out of nowhere, and we really had to kind of work together to get it. And especially because Umber Hulks can really make you hit your friends real easily, no matter what range you're shooting from.
So I'm going to stop you there and say that, curiously enough, that's kind of a puzzle in itself. The only way to get to where they were going was to get the blessing from the elemental, right? So there's a plethora of ways for you to throw puzzles out there, and the reason I'm talking about puzzles in encounters is one of the questions that I saw today was a very, very good question. Actually, it came from a new player, and he said, I'm a lot like Corey. My in real life int's a 2. He said, no, but his question was that he wanted to create. He created a fighter, and he put his highest stat in int, and his second highest stat was in wisdom, which is cool. He wanted to play a really smart, tactical, genius fighter who, had a lot of knowledge and a lot of history and a lot of things, and was pretty sound and well educated, etc., etc., etc. And his issue was his DM does a lot of puzzles, does a lot of, if you have 4, 3, and 2, what's the next number? What's the next number in the order if it's not 1? And 5's not an option or something, something crazy. So, basic riddle, what's one thing you can put in a barrel that makes it lighter? If I ask these two that, and, Corey has the 2 intelligence and he has a 20, he probably, I probably should maybe write down on a note card. I don't think it's necessarily an intelligence check or a wisdom check. I think it's almost like passive perception. It's passive knowledge, I mean, if you have a high int, you should innately have a little bit more of a bonus. And if you don't give that to your players, in this case, the DM just like, this is what you have. What do you want to do? Based on what this guy said. What motive do they have to play a smart character or try to play a unique or different character? Like, I think it's really cool that this guy, had this idea for a character that was a super smart warrior, which doesn't help him mechanically, really. He was doing it, and in this particular case, this Dungeon Master, it should have helped him mechanically. I would have certainly helped him out. I would have constantly passed note cards to him, sent him text messages in his phone, some kind of hint to let him know. And the answer to the question, the only thing you can put in a barrel to make it lighter is a hole. But there's ways to and you D&D fans out there are saying things like bag of holding and things like that. I know, but portable hole, whatever.
A torch.
Yeah, torch. But the age old answer is even if you put a torch in there, it's a lit torch. Momentarily it'll be heavier. So the point is, if someone's playing a character that's got some that's unique, motivate them to continue doing that, right? Otherwise, you're going to have a bland game. What do you think, Corey?
I think it's kind of one of those tricky things when you're talking about the mental attributes as far as these games go. When you go wisdom and charisma, a lot of people, like, it's easy to play somebody who's strong because there's something physical you can do in the game that says, oh, I'm strong because I can pick up this 400-pound barrel, or I can whack this dude with my giant ass great axe or something.
Right.
That's easy to quantify and to reward that play style. Whereas the mental stuff, if you have a really smart character and the player himself isn't necessarily so smart as his character would be, how do you help him play somebody that's smarter than he actually is? Or how do you help him play somebody that's more charismatic than he actually is? Maybe he's not a good talker, but he's playing the party's paladin, who's supposed to be an amazing talker. Like, how do you help them without kind of playing their character for them, or just giving away all your stuff? Like, and I think that's a good thing to do, is give them hints. Don't give them the answer, but give them hints that help them along the line, so that gives them a higher probability of getting the answer over the other players. Maybe as far as charisma goes, that's another tough one. I don't know how would you handle somebody with a high charisma that doesn't necessarily, that's not necessarily a charismatic person.
So you're saying, just so we all understand, so you're saying someone rolled their stats, and on the charisma they rolled an 18, but in real life they have the charisma of John?
That's right.
You actually have the perfect setup for this, because this actually happened in our game.
Right.
In that exact...
John, you're a good guy, though.
Yeah.
So, I just think the easiest way is to give them a little bit more. So, like, if Corey was playing a charismatic character, and he is charismatic as a person, and he has a high charisma, I'm not going to have to say, Corey, are you really going to say that? Corey's a savvy enough player that he's not going to say, if some overweight waitress in the tavern walks up and says, hey, does this dress make me look fat? Corey's savvy lady killer bard's not going to say, no, it's your fat that makes you look fat. And then he's going to say, can I roll a charisma to see if she likes me? That's kind of stupid. I mean, the good news is most people typically try to stay away from what they're not, but in the event that they don't, you just kind of have to help them. We have a guy in our Saturday game that's a younger kid. I think he's about 14 now.
13, 14.
14. He started when he was 12 with us, and we had to give him a lot of help along the way, because he was learning the ropes as a role player, and he was learning the ropes as a paladin, right? And so it just depends on the level of experience of the player. You can kind of, when someone says something to him, say, no, hold on a minute, like, this is what you can do, and kind of guide them in the right direction. And it shouldn't take that many times before they start kind of understanding it. But beyond level 7, 8, 9, if they've had the character say from level 1 and you've helped them from like 1st to 7, 1st to 5, 1st to 6, just kind of gradually, ease off, because eventually it is kind of on their end. And you know what? If my answer to everything is, kill them first, ask questions later, I probably shouldn't be the representative. If I just have a short temper, I hate everything, I swing really quick, probably shouldn't be the team's representative, And if all my characters are the same way, I especially shouldn't be the player representative. continuing on encounters, and I believe I brought this up before. I was in a game recently where the DM was running an old module, which I wanna touch out real quick about Fifth Edition and kind of pat him on the back about Fifth Edition because Fifth Edition, if you hear people talk about it, if you go on the Facebook group pages, I mean, what do you see? You see guys talking about how easy it is to get TPK'd and how other guys are saying how easy it is to just virtually not die. So it's literally both sides of the spectrum. So that's kind of what you want.
Yeah.
It's not one or the other, right?
Yeah.
And so in this particular encounter, there was a puzzle between we had to get certain runes, put them in certain places, answer 2 or 3 questions, and it was supposed to awaken this golem that was going to go into this lava that we couldn't get into, and it was going to open this door, or it was going to drain this place because this door was unopenable, inoperable, and the door was like highly protected by magic. Modern day game, we have things like Dispel Magic that they didn't have in the old days to the level it is today. I walked up to the door and I rolled my Dispel Magic and I rolled a natural 20. And the DM says, so what happens? And I said, well, you're running a first edition module, but minus this being God magic, it's gone. You know, like if you want rules as written, right? 9th level and below would have been removed. And he said, yeah, it's not a 9th level spell, so I guess you break the puzzle without breaking the puzzle. And he didn't really know what to say because and sometimes when you run the older modules like that, you might want to do some tweaking first, but you can still actually run them pretty close. Like if it's supposed to be 4 orcs, you can still run it as 4 orcs from today's monster manual, and it's gonna be pretty close. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I thought it was pretty well. As far as tweaking it, yeah, as you go through different editions, you should always check the rules from beforehand and the new system, because things like that will happen, especially as going from 2nd edition to 3rd edition where you had the empowerment of players. In the newer editions, it's going to be a lot easier for them if you're converting a 1st or 2nd edition puzzle into 3rd and beyond, because they have so much more that they can do.
Right, agreed. Corey?
Yeah, I haven't played any of the other editions, obviously, but my comment from what I've heard is that players from 3rd edition were pretty powerful, so they probably had this is just like how I would balance things. So the encounters are probably more difficult to compensate. So going to 5th edition where players are still pretty strong, but they're not probably as strong. You might have to look at scaling it back, whereas in 1st edition everything's deadly, so
everything was very deadly in talking about your Pathfinder experience, there was a guy that had a question about Pathfinder, and I want to touch on it real quick. About he wanted to use a Pathfinder module for 5th. Okay, he didn't say which one. I think it's Emerald Spire or something. Okay. That doesn't matter. The point is, he had kind of a unique question that I feel is self-explanatory for some of you guys. So if this comes off rude, I apologize. But the question was, there's a lot of undead in this game, and he says if I convert the undead from Pathfinder to Next, I think I'm going to kill my D&D Next players because it's going to be too powerful, because the undead from the Pathfinder I can still use because it's based on the same D20 system. The answer is, and there's a second part to this question. The answer is your Pathfinder characters are going to be stronger than your D&D 5th edition characters. Period. That's just the way it is. So, you can't necessarily pull monsters directly from 3rd edition D&D 3.5, 4th if you want to, or Pathfinder, and just pull them directly to Next allowing them to keep the same armor class. They're hardly ever going to get hit.
It's not going to work.
They're never going to get hit. And the next part of his question was that in Pathfinder, and I'm not a savant in Pathfinder, but this particular guy said that cure spells or healing spells hurt undead. In Pathfinder. Is that correct, John?
That is. And that was actually in 3.0 as well. If you used curing spells on undead, it would hurt them just like a harm spell would hurt a human.
I knew it was in third. It is in Pathfinder?
It is in Pathfinder.
Okay.
It's negative energy, heals undead, positive energy hurts undead, and reverse for living. So
one of the things was he said that the undead in Pathfinder have too much HP for what's going on, and not to mention the cure spells that the 5th edition players have, or the healing spells, won't be able to hurt them. I'll tell you what I would do, but before I do that, let's see what 2 new players would do if you were running this game.
For me, the easiest thing would do is to just flat out see if the monsters I'm trying to port over are already in the monster manual. If so, then bam, just use ones in the monster manual. If they're not in there, then say, what level is my party? Level 5. Find the appropriate CR creature in the monster manual, look at a couple of them, see the kind of their averages, say, oh look, they have around this much HP, this much, AC. Just create something similar to that.
John?
In terms of that, personally, for a game that I would be running, I like the idea that a healing magic would hurt undead.
Okay.
And that likewise negative energy would heal them. So for my games personally, I would house rule that in. That to me was a big thing of clerics and paladins were the undead's biggest fear, if they could fear things, because they can just channel endless amounts of positive energy just to wipe them off the face of the earth.
So I agree with Corey and John. I think that if you're using 4 whites in this particular encounter from Pathfinder, just take the 4 whites from the monster manual. And if they're not in the monster manual, let's say you're using, I think the world in Pathfinder is called Galaron, right?
I
believe idea. It's called.
I'm still learning.
Let's say that you're using Galaron Imperial Greyhawk skeletons from Pathfinder or something. And they don't have these Pathfinder exclusive skeletons in 5th edition. But let's say the CR for these things is 3. I need to find something close to the CR of 3 and see round about what the AC is, or kind of gauge, right? I know that my guys on average are hitting an AC of a 14 or 15. So if I want to make it slightly hard, I would make it a 16, or make their ACs 15 to 16.
And so the DMG even has, how to create your own monsters. This is how you balance it with HP. This is how you determine their CR. If they have like 10 HP, it's like that's a half a CR, and then however much AC is a half a CR, and then the offense half CR. It takes a little bit longer than that the other way, but that's probably the easiest way to balance it towards 5e is to just create it from scratch.
If you were going to try to run a module that's built from another edition, D&D 5th Next is designed to let you do that. But you have to know what you're doing, meaning the easiest thing for you to do is if it's supposed to be 4 skeletons, you don't have to see what these particular skeletons have. Now, if these particular skeletons are burning skeletons because they died in a city that was, that was burned to death from an erupting volcano, and you want to give them some type of fire ability on their attacks, then you just grab skeletons, give them immunity fire, and give them additional fire damage, and you're good, right? So, like, you can still modify them, but you don't have to see what the AC is and compare it to the AC of the new skeleton, because the old PCs are different than today's PCs. All you need to know is that there's supposed to be 4 skeletons there, or 4 zombies, or whatever the case may be. But as far as porting things over directly from other editions and using them, guys, the numbers aren't adding up, because in 5th everything was scaled back. So I mean, if you have 6 players and it takes 5 of them, 18s are better to hit on an average encounter because you're just pulling stuff from the Pathfinder website, that's a problem. You're going to TPK, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
You know?
Well, and I do have one suggestion for if people are trying to port stuff over that there isn't a direct correlation. Something real easy that I've found is effective. Find something similar that's in the monster manual already. Find it and just reskin it. As long as if you can find something that's really close to what it is, but maybe it's instead of a skeleton, it's like some four-legged beast. Just change the look of it and use the stats for it, as long as it's correctly scaled for your party, and that'll work.
Yeah, and you know, talking about encounters, guys. You know, the game gives you hit dice. So a lot of the problems a lot of DMs and players are going with is that players feel like, oh man, I've went through too many encounters without a rest. And the DMs feel like my players want to rest after every stupid encounter. When we started our Saturday game, and you know, of course, you can house rule and modify. Standard rule was short rest was an hour, long rest was a full night. Prior to this, I always played short rest was a night, a full rest was a week. That's how I'd always played before. That way, you don't have to go through 1,500 encounters to get from point A to point B before you get to your dungeon. And so, talking about that, guys, you, as a DM, sometimes you need to give them a reason to not sleep. Maybe they only have their own borrowed time, or maybe they're in, you know, think of it as, you know, a lawful good cleric in Ravenloft where the party is going to attract evil. You know, they're going to hunt them down and all this other stuff, right? So sometimes you can give them reasons to not want to rest. If they still want to rest, you know, make a roll, see if they get attacked, but don't just let them rest just because. And at the same time, don't refuse them the ability to rest. You know what I mean? Sometimes it should be easier than others, right? But talking about hit dice, guys, make sure that you're playing a game in which hit dice is coming into effect. Too many times I've seen where hit dice don't mean anything. Where you either get a full rest or not at all because the DM doesn't want to deal with it. And that's, guys, at the end of the day, like, this game was built around going into a dungeon, clearing out several rooms and getting your treasure. That was the general basis of the game. So make sure you're using your hit dice. How do you feel when you I know in my game, Corey, and I'm not sure about John, but I know Corey had said that in my game was the first time he'd used hit dice and had felt the difference between a short rest and a long rest, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You know, how do you feel like in my game when you're at a strong encounter and you have not so many spells left versus the standard game that you were in where there was lots of encounters? The encounters were kind of overwhelming, but you were always at full power.
You know, I think the former is more tense and it's more fun because you have to think strategically. Whereas the other one, you're just like, this is what my character can do, and he's gonna do everything every time. And 5e was built around having short rest and long rest. You have short rest abilities and long rest abilities, and it greatly imbalances the classes if they're not having proper short rest and long rest. Like fighters are kind of meant to be just always on, you know, get a 30-minute rest and they're back to full power, right? Whereas wizards, being more powerful overall, are meant to have to be more conservative with their spells because they don't get them all back on a short rest. Right. You have to get a long rest in. If you're just kind of giving everybody a long rest every time they have an encounter, then your classes are going to be imbalanced. I mean, that's just the way it's designed.
And it's a little different playing tabletop versus Roll20. Or online gaming, whether you're using map tools or whatever your tool of choice is. What John, tell us about that, because you just joined a Pathfinder.
Yeah.
You just became a trader. No, I'm kidding. You joined a Pathfinder online game.
Yeah, I've joined a little forum community where we play by posts most of the time. We do a lot of our RP over just forum posts, and then when we get to an encounter, we'll all make sure everyone can get on, and then we'll head over to Roll20 and do our encounters there. And it's fun. It's a little slow at times because we're posting when we have time between work and school and whatever else anybody may have going for them. In that, you can kind of, like, if you're not paying attention all the time, you can kind of disconnect yourself from it, and you kind of have to refresh yourself before you just jump right into the battle. As far as Pathfinder, I haven't really seen a whole lot done with the short versus long rests as much, because most of what we're doing, it's like if we're going into a encounter or something like that, we head in and we're pushing through. I mean, we're not stopping until we finish what we came here to do. But that was a little easier, I understand, because Pathfinder is a good deal stronger than, say, 5e.
What? But also, do you think that the reason that why the encounters are just straightforward like that, is it like one encounter each time you go to Roll20, or does the GM make it, this is your first encounter, this is your next encounter, these are the encounters for the day?
It kind of depends, because we usually do one encounter, like we roleplay everything out, then we have our encounter. Then we'll head back to the play-by-post, we'll summarize what happened on the fight so that anybody who wants to read over it can, and then we'll continue going from there because we continue on the post. If we get to another point in which we're also doing skill checks and everything like in this, and we do that on the forum because they have a little dice roller. But if we get to another combat then, and we're all still there, we'll just hop back on and continue where we left off. Our character sheets are kept track of on there, so we haven't changed our health, we haven't changed our spells lost, we haven't changed any of our abilities that are limited. It's all just kind of kept there until we get to a point where we rest.
Perfect. Yeah. So, and it's going to be done a little different online, right? Like it's going to be online's going to be a little bit different than tabletop, obviously, because it's two different things.
Oh yeah.
But the point is, the game is meant to wear you down. So when you get, a good friend of mine put it to me very well when 4th edition was out. He said that if I take 4 level 30 characters, which was your max level in 4th, he said if I take 4 level 30 characters at full power, I should walk through any max level boss there is, like Orcus or any solo you can name. I should walk through them. The point is, I should be almost dead by the time I get to Orcus, or by the time I get to Tiamat or Tagasus. I should be just about gone, and that's the point, is that not to say that the end boss always has to be first or last. You can fight the toughest fight of the day first, and then you're so spent from fighting that guy, you're just trying to survive the rest of the day.
Like maybe you snuck in, killed the king, and then now all of his guards are after you.
There you go.
Having to, go through all these guard encounters.
I'm pretty notorious. I make sure to go up and down weak versus strong encounters. And speaking of weak versus strong encounters, I want to talk about unbeatable encounters and or encounters that should defeat your party. So it's very common, and it's I think it's in a tabletop gamer's innate to want to fight the things that they don't think they can beat, because beating those things is like a super sense of accomplishment.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is there's no reset button.
If you die, you die.
Yeah, so maybe you get resurrected, maybe you don't, maybe you get TPK'd. I'm a big fan of putting things out there that they should run from. They should learn that they, give your Skyrim analogy, Corey. How does it go?
Oh, it's in Skyrim. Every encounter is fairly challenging because all the monsters scale with you. So everything that you fight is around your level, give or take a few levels.
So orcs are going to be orcs to you, or sharks are going to be sharks to you. From whether it's Fallout, it's the same engine from first to 30th or 20th or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So I don't think that's the way it's supposed to be. I don't necessarily think that just because you're in an area, the only thing you're going to encounter are things equivalent to your level. I think you should have to run sometimes.
Yeah. Well, and they do. I know I have played both of those games, and I haven't played Skyrim as much, but I know I've played a lot of Fallout, and there are areas where it's if you go into this area and you're not like the level that you're supposed to be when you go into that area, the things will ruin you. They will completely obliterate you, wipe you off the face of the planet before you even know what happened.
Well, yeah, they're certain, like the monsters don't scale down with you; they scale up.
Yeah, they scale up with
so
you.
If you're not the equivalent level you're supposed to be, you just get owned. But if you're above that level, they go up too.
They do a little bit of that. Like they'll scale to a point, but like if you go back to the first areas, you can just wipe through everything.
Not in Fallout.
In Fallout,
Skyrim is different.
Yeah.
Yes, I recognize that.
The point is, you should run across things that you should run from, and from a DM's perspective, and from I think a player's perspective, your goal isn't always blackout. Your goal isn't always kill everything and loot, right? Your goal may be to kidnap someone, steal an item, fight who you have to. I think I've mentioned this before. One of the most famous fights that my players have seen was in 2008, the Purple Worm, who was hungry. They were in an underground castle and it broke through and attacked him and swallowed one of them and left. As soon as he swallowed one, he left. And it was such a fun encounter that I kind of mirrored it, the random Purple Worm attack, in another game later. And so not the Saturday game, Sunday game, and out of town, but it was why would the Purple Worm just stay there? And one of the players in the initial one, was so mad. He used to get so mad when monsters would run. He's like, monsters shouldn't run, and I'm like, he's hungry. It ate. Now it's getting beat up. Why is it going to stay? I'm leaving. And, he was so convinced that monsters should just stay and fight till they die. He's also a big fan that dragons shouldn't fly. Why do they have a fly speed? Right? They're supposed to fly down in front of you and fight. No.
This isn't an MMO here.
From the DM's perspective, you need to make sure that your encounters are being run effectively. And the reason I say that is because you don't want your skeletons fighting as effectively as your dragons, right? Mm-hmm. Does that sound fair?
Yeah. Smarter opponents are going to be more efficient in combat. Mm-hmm. Period. They're gonna they may CR wise they may be weaker than another monster, but they may use terrain to their advantage. They may use cover. They may run. They may bait people. There's all kinds of tactics that they can use that should make them more tough because they're intelligent.
Two things, two monsters come to mind talking about genius intelligence, and I don't mean statistically, but I mean if you read about them, mind flayers or illithids and ultraloths, which I think finally made a comeback in 5e. Those creatures were super, super smart, and mechanically on paper they weren't the strongest thing around. They're tough, they're dangerous, but there were things of the CR, of their same CR, that could be stronger, but it wasn't about what they could do to you physically one-on-one, which is bad. It was what they brought with them, what served them, and what damage. An illithid may come into a town and infest several powerful women with larvae and say, you have the hand and eye of Vecna being protected here. this town's going to be an Illithid town, or you give me the hand and Eye of Vecna. And should you choose to fight, my Gith Yankee outside are going to storm you. So, that's something more along the lines of what an Illithid would do, not the Illithid attacks the town.
Right.
That's what a zombie would do.
It's like a crime boss. They don't sit there and do something. They sit back, they plan, and they bring a lot of muscle.
Mm-hmm.
They don't themselves get ready to just wipe something out.
Right. Continuing to talk about encounters, I can't stress enough the importance of NPC encounters, convincing people politically to help you. Like if you have to get to town and convince the magistrate to give you the writ so that you can go to the Forbidden Castle that no one's supposed to go to, that's an encounter. Mm-hmm. Solving the Dispel Magic Door that I spoke of earlier, that's an encounter. Those are all encounters. The terrain of the desert affecting the PCs while they try to fight the Ogre Mages, that's an additional piece to an encounter. Guys, you have weather, you have terrain, you have all these things working for you and against you. And I've always made a habit of describing combats, describing things that go around. I try to describe the wind, the weather, the ground, when people are fighting, because hit points has always been described as a pool. It is your complete fighting ability. It's your vitality, your endurance, your durability, etc., etc. So every time you get hit for 4 points of damage, you may have just get knocked to the ground. You didn't necessarily get cut or hit. You may have just swung and hit a tree and it just wore you out. It's not necessarily you being hit, and that's how it used to always be described. So from a DM perspective, try to build imagery for your encounters. It makes your encounters a little bit more visual, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And from the player side, I think that you guys should do the same, right? Like if you're casting a spell from your god, kind of try to describe what you want it to do, or what you feel like you're doing when you're mending people, right?
Touching them.
Yeah.
John.
Description is key.
Yeah, description is key. So we're
Alvis always touching himself.
Yeah. Alvis the Irish dwarf. We're gonna get him to do that voice one day. We're gonna get him to do that voice one day.
Someday.
But
we'll just video him at next session.
That's right.
Splice it in.
And we're gonna upload it. On a good note, guys, we've gotten quite a few submissions for our first PDF that we're gonna, or our first PDF we're gonna put together for you guys. A lot of monsters, templates, and things like that. Some submissions from Tribality. Also, we've acquired our first sponsor. We've gotten our first sponsor, so we want to give thanks to the guys at undergroundkeyboardcagefighters.com. undergroundkeyboardcagefighters.com. Check them out, guys. They do everything from League of Legends to Dungeons and Dragons, Pathfinder, LARPing. They got everything from White Wolf, Mage Ascension, anything that's role playing game related.
Just geek related stuff.
Nerd related stuff is they got a lot of stuff. They got a lot of cool merchandise you guys can check out. Check out their Facebook page. Just type in underground keyboard cage fighters. I'm gonna double check real quick. Give me 1 second.
We'll make sure we get the link in the YouTube video.
We will give you guys the link. But the Facebook page is facebook.com/UDKCF. Go give those guys a look. They're really pretty cool. They got a lot of neat stuff for you guys, right?
Yep.
I'm gonna go ahead and type it in the chat so anybody watching can get it.
Okay, awesome. You be technical support.
be tech.
Congratulations, John. You found your purpose in life. But we've talked about encounters a lot, and we're gonna. I think we should incorporate that to the PDF. I think looking for new things to fit your surroundings that should be there. That's cool. You don't want it's especially cool for your experienced players because they're going to start fighting things that they've probably never fought before because it's new. Someone created it from the other side of the world, from where they're from. They've never seen a Dracatar, Dragonborn Centaur, or whatever. They've never seen one of those before.
What's your favorite monster that you've ever created, like custom build monster, or kind of doesn't have to be a monster but creature?
Man, there's been so many. So
most of them designed to kill us.
No.
They're all designed to help us.
Oh, true. I forget.
He's like, guys, these guys murdering you. I built them to help you.
You guys want to be undead, right? No. So the creatures in my world in the northwestern continent, in one of the northwesternmost continent, in what was called the Runathedian Pantheon, is kind of a desert land. And there's a kingdom in the center. The best way I could describe it without you seeing it is think kind of like Troy. It's got huge walls. It's surrounded by a desert. And there's some things in the desert. There's like a hidden people. There's a lot of gypsies. And I wanted to create something that could fill that desert, that could really bother people from any level. And it could also give a reason for adventuring out into the desert. And so I created these things called Denarian, or dune beasts. The best way I could describe them, they had these kind of like large spikes, and they were kind of a cross between like a mangy, large, bulky, mangy coyote wolf looking thing. They were just giant desert wolves with like these large porcupine spikes sticking out of them. And the spikes and the little bit of fur you get because they're kind of mangy were in high demand as hides. So people would go dune hunting. They would go hunt these dune beasts, these Denarian. And I think fundamentally, as simple as those things were, those were probably one of my favorite things I ever created. What is some of the coolest things that you guys have encountered in your game?
You go first.
Well, mine is actually coming up. It's a recent thing with my Pathfinder online group, and it's a spin-off of the Warforged, because the person who's running it, he liked the idea of kind of this golem race, but he didn't like how D&D had handled it. So he had gone and created his own race, and they're called soul jars. These are not their own race. These are, when you die, if someone traps your soul in a soul gem or traps it in a case like some of the spells do, it's called a mage crystal in his world, and your soul gets stuck in it, and you can put it in a golem that is specially built for this, and you gain control of the golem as though it were your body. It has some pretty heavy penalties to doing it, but
I actually did something very similar. Again, talking about encounters, so in what this Pathfinder GM did is something very similar to what I did. I always tell people that I don't use Drow and Warforged in my world because Drow is exclusive to Greyhawk and Forgotten Realms, and Eberron is the home for Warforged. So it's kind of stupid to have Drow in your world if Loth isn't in your world, or you can change their origins and settings or what have you. But That's not to say that you can't change use the stat block, but change the origins. So, in fact, in my Sunday game, the group are all, and I don't make Warforged a race. I make it a template.
Yeah, that's essentially what he did with this. It's you used to be something. You can start as one, but it's like you pick what your race was, and then you create your Warforged. So in my soul jar based on that.
In my Sunday game, the group was trying to go into this temple where they couldn't go into because they were living, and it was like a very powerful undead temple just to keep it quick, and it would like drain their life, and they knew they couldn't get into it, and they hated what was in it so bad that they went and found this. They found a way to have someone turn them into these things so they could go in there as not technically living creatures, right? So that's cool. What's yours?
And it's not really a monster design, but I really enjoyed the whole one of your boss fights, the Mortimer fight, the second time we fought him. I know like the entire party hated it, and they're like, "You're the worst DM ever."
I was really sad to have to miss that fight. I really wanted to see him die.
But it was an interesting encounter. It was in a city. There was buildings. People could hop onto the buildings. It was kind of a big area. And it was one of the first encounters I played in your game where everybody had to be tactically smart or they would suffer severely. And I'll just say that a lot of people suffered severely. I thought that was kind of a cool fight.
What made the Mortimer fight so brutal was I brought back a threat that we haven't seen since really second edition. And it was age. Mortimer was aging them, and they were getting withered. They were getting, they were getting hurt from age, and so they didn't really know how to deal with it because it wasn't. There wasn't no.
There's nothing in 5e.
There's no
really
healing age. You can't cure wounds or age back, right? So there was restorative spells and what have you, but they were too busy trying to focus on not dying and using those type of spells to fix it. So it was one of my favorite fights, I think. It's probably my favorite fight of the Saturday game. I also I reinvented the Man Scorpions from the older editions. I brought those guys back. I thought those guys are cool.
We have those guys out.
Yeah, I heard those were pretty bad.
That was the session I missed, and Ting was playing my cleric, and he's like, "Oh, I didn't know you had cure poison."
Yeah.
I'm like, what?
So you hear about these guys. John actually had to fall out of the game for, what did you miss about?
I missed 4 months.
So he missed about,
I missed 6 or 7 games.
He had to drop out of the game for a while. His character was a werewolf, and so but realistically, guys, I gotta say the Saturday game's really cool. We have 8 PCs. Most of them have been there for a long time. No one's on their phone. Everyone's paying attention. Our attendance rate's 90-something%. We've made every game that's been scheduled. It's a really cool game, and that's important because talking about, you heard John say, I really wanted to see Mortimer die. Mm-hmm. That's important. If you have guys missing a lot and all this other stuff, you're gonna have people coming into the game. Hey, what'd I miss? Who's this guy? Oh, he's a bad guy, so I hate him too. Okay, cool. And it really takes the drive out of someone who's been there every time Mortimer did something bad. I'm telling you, every time I say the word Mortimer, John cringes. All the terrible things he did.
Motherfucker.
Everything he did to his sister and his family and all that other stuff.
Sister, family, Ting. Tegan. Come on, they were brothers.
So
it's all paltry stuff.
So you want to, from the DM perspective, you want to make your villains lifelike. You want to give them a reason to hate them. Right?
Yeah.
So keep sending your submissions in, guys, and check out undergroundkeyboardcagefighters.com. I gotta say, I like the name. When I actually was an early young cage fighter, I used to get mad at people that would mouth off on MySpace or Facebook. I'm like, freaking keyboard maniac, like just come climb in the cage and see what happens. And so it's actually cool that someone's got that name. It's a really cool name. I like it. It fits geeks, right?
It does.
So we're gonna continue talking about encounters. We got a little bit of time left. In talking about the Warforged being reformatted for this particular Dungeon Master's world, and what I used in my other game may come up in Saturday game one day. I can see you as a Warforged. I can see you as a Warforged.
Nah, he's already chosen a Somkarn.
Yeah.
He's got this.
Man, just keep adding on them. You gotta catch them all.
But by level 20, you're gonna be a CR 130 creature.
He's gonna have more templates than levels. So
hey, he's getting up there where Leonic was.
Real quick off topic, talking about geekdom and nerddom. I always talk to you guys about the Bubby factor for the guy with the unnatural luck in my Beaumont game, my Sunday game back home, and we have his counterpart in our Saturday game. Our mathematician told us that she's a mathematical anomaly. When she was trying to cure her age from the situation, she got to roll at advantage, and literally all she had to do was not roll double ones, and she would cure her age by like 1d6 plus 6 years. It would reduce down. She rolled 2 1s. Mathematically, she just rolls really bad, and this other guy, the Bubby factor, does really well. And we did a one-off the other day, and in the Sunday game, we did after the regular game ended, we got to play a little later. We did a one-off, and I actually talk about the instant crit, the 20-20-20. Actually, 20-20-20, one of the guys in the one-off, and it was the Bubby factor, and it was really funny because we were talking about it, and Bubby actually wasn't there, and when I told him about it, he just he told me that the only reason that I was allowed to do that, the reason that Chessex allowed me to grant me that power was because he wasn't present, because in his presence it wouldn't have worked. This is the same guy that I called him one day to ask him a question about one of the novels I was writing, and he said, "Hey, I can't talk to you right now. The game's on." Hangs up on me, and it's like, "Wait a minute, this guy doesn't watch sports. What game is on?" So I call him back. He's like, "LCS is on. I'll call you back." I'm like, "LCS?" And so finally, when it was all over, I told it was a League of Legends championship, right? So, if you're a League of Legends fan, you're in good company. There's a lot of good guys out there with you, and I'm telling you this to go back and saying, check out the Underground Keyboard Cage Fighters, because they got a lot of cool stuff about on League of Legends on there. But we're gonna continue with encounters for the day. What in all the games you've been in, what was some of the? Give me an idea of what you felt was one of your least favorite encounters.
This is kind of mirrored in 2 games, but it was one of those ones where you get surrounded from all sides. Everything's faster than you because story-wise they need to do something. Like. In one game it was I can't hit the cleric in our party, so I'm gonna go ahead and have these guys come up on you, and they all have surprise, even though you were all actively searching for them. But I'm gonna go ahead and give them surprise anyway, just so they can get that extra damage in. And they were all really hard creatures. Pretty much like if they had ganged up on somebody, that they were almost one-shotting people.
I remember.
And we managed to beat them just because of our tactics, but it's like those aren't super fun because there's no way there was nothing that you could do to do anything about it. Like, we were actively searching for these things, and it didn't matter. Don't get a roll for it; it just happens. And the other example is we were surrounded by ogres, in Craig's game, and all the ogres were like double hasted, and we were all in difficult terrain, and they were moving like 100 feet around, regular move.
Then they double moved.
And then they double moved.
No drag penalty. John?
Let's see. Least favorite fight. I'm really tempted to say when we were fighting lichens in the swamp, just because that, like, after that point, that's kind of when Leonic started to decline into monsterhood. But no. Aside from that, it would probably be. It was one of my first actual encounters in Dungeons and Dragons, and it was in 3rd edition. And it was, we were surrounded by an entire army of skeletons. Literally for miles, all we could see were skeletons. And it was kind of that thing of, we're trying to defeat these necromancers that are trying to raise an army, and we accidentally got teleported into the middle of them.
Had you accidentally get teleported?
Long story.
Well, I mean, was it something that the party could help or no?
We had asked a guy to help get us there. He was a gnome. Not actually a gnome. He was a copper dragon disguised as a gnome, who had taken a ton of levels in sorcerer.
Why was the copper dragon against you?
He wasn't against us. He was with us. He accidentally teleported us in there. We helped him out with something. We asked him to help us get somewhere. He said, "All right."
Young or old?
Fairly young.
So just a bad roll on his part?
No, I mean he was getting us there, but he's not the best.
The reason I'm asking these questions is because I
mean it was to set up a storyline that was going on, but it's
better to as a dungeon master, if your party thwarts your plans, if your party does something that changes what you had in
we didn't do anything. He offered to teleport us
there.
We all agreed.
I know.
Yeah.
I'm saying, like, in general.
Yeah.
Between your story and Corey's, from a dungeon master's perspective, it's very rewarding to the players to know that they thwarted the plans of the would-be bad guy. Not necessarily you as the dungeon master, but the would-be bad guy. Mm-hmm. So when you say, "I don't care, this has to happen," you're basically telling them that being heroic is not rewarding. Right? You're basically telling them that being, in the case where the main villain's about to leave and there's a portal, a magical ward protecting them, and they go force their way through this aura and they're getting ripped apart, 2 of the 5 die and the other 3 kill the main wizard, and he has a contingency that sends him back and instantly regenerates him back to life. You're telling the other 3, in this world, there's no reason to be heroic. Right? Because no matter what happens, and from a DM's perspective, if your main bad guy, talking about Mortimer for a minute, Mortimer had conversations with several members of the party for months of real life time before he was ever considered a bad guy. In all actuality, from my perspective, he was never meant to be a target. He was just kind of a bad guy that was in the distance, that he was against the party for, like, they had different views, but he wasn't necessarily against them. He grew into being a bad guy because of the interaction between the two. And the party decided to go fight this religious war against him. So that's why he became he wasn't meant to be a major bad guy when he was initially introduced. In fact, Tegan, one of the original characters in the group, was missing a hand for 12 sessions, and it was Mortimer that restored his hand. Mm-hmm. So
he shouldn't have been a heretic.
Pretty easy.
All wise chosen of Songkarn.
It's not that I wasn't right per se. He was wrong. But yeah, so continuing with encounters, guys. Make sure that your encounters are everything from, maybe the old ceiling from the castle falls in, not because it was a trap, because it was old.
Okay.
Right? Like, there are things, poisonous snakes in the swamp bite you. You essentially get the poison condition until someone casts Remove Curse. From a DM perspective, what am I doing? I'm getting rid of one of the cleric's level 3 spells, or Cure Disease, whatever, level 1, 2 spells, whatever it is. And you can also, at higher levels, you can also have things continue to affect them later. In this game, Mortimer was the first, because after they left, they were actually in other humanoid bodies. Their bodies had been destroyed. They had been trapped in these soul gems. And they felt the effects because they were old and withered. They recently just fought a Rakshasa, which was like a side mission, really. The Rakshasa lured them in from one of the characters' old storylines that I incorporated. It wasn't something they told me. I randomly generated someone had defeated this Rakshasa, someone's ancestor defeated this Rakshasa so many years ago, and he was back for revenge trying to eliminate that the bloodline and eliminate the family of all those that were a part of who he defeated, or who defeated him. And the Rakshasa put this curse on them that effectively stops him from being able to heal. Now he has to use his Remove Curse spells to temporarily alleviate that, so people can use their hit dice and whatnot before it comes back the next day. So these things from past encounters can continue to affect you at later levels.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yep.
What did you guys think of that Rakshasa encounter?
I thought the encounter was fun. The condition afterward, not so much. But that is something that's just going to have to be in effect for a while. I know for me as a Berserker Barbarian, I'm not going to be able to frenzy for a long time until we get that fixed.
Mm-hmm.
Because I cannot continue to take levels of exhaustion and just expect that he's going to be able to heal me of it.
Right. And so, from a player's perspective, if your DM isn't telling you things about your battlefield, and guys, can I borrow this?
No.
This should not always be your battlefield. You're here, they're here, engage. That should not always be the battlefield. There's a battlefield. Battlefield's here. You're shooting up. They're shooting down. There's so many ways to create battlefields. Winds, things like that.
There's a battlefield.
Yeah,
you're all around.
Obstacles.
You've surrounded them. They're in a building. They're hiding.
And remember, when you're cutting corners, I don't know if they actually made this rule in 5th yet, but in 4th it was a rule, and it's a rule that I still utilize. I can't move a diagonal if there's a corner there. I actually have to walk around that corner.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a good rule of thumb because not necessarily to hinder the players, more as it helps everyone remember and acknowledge the battlefield.
And I think it's indirectly in 5e because when you're moving through basically hostile spaces, it's difficult terrain. If you're moving through friendly spaces, it's like difficult terrain.
There you go.
So if you're if you're moving through something that has something in it, I would effectively say that's difficult terrain, which effectively means you're going like that
Move
anyway.
around it.
There you go. Yeah, I mean, so I guess it is indirectly.
Mm-hmm.
Continuing with encounters,
I would say real quick, make sure to have encounters, or try to have encounters that challenge their stats. Like, not like, oh, he has a 17 strength, so I'm gonna make him make strength saves, or he has like. What I mean by that is, combat favors their combat stats, right? They can go whack people with their physical stats, or blast people with their mental stats. Have encounters that challenge their intellect, like puzzles, or have encounters that challenge their wisdom,
Mm-hmm.
like with common knowledge or their charisma by talking to people.
NPCs.
That's a good way to design encounters, to look at the stats, say these stats do these things, so I should have a good balance of encounters that incorporate these different aspects of it.
Just like last session in the Saturday game, the armies that you guys acquired went to those who made the successful charisma checks, right? So,
So close to
a lot of you min-maxers who say, "Oh, I'm a big tough fighter. I don't need charisma," wouldn't have gotten an army because you don't have unless you rolled a nat 20.
Not even then.
Well, and a fighter is not always a good leader. They're a good soldier.
Sure.
You may not be the best leader, even if you can fight better than anyone in the group.
But that could be said for anything. The point is, the point is, that as a DM and as a player, if you design your game around nothing but combat, there's nothing else really ever tried. Your characters you're gonna see that your players over time will be min-maxers for combat. In my game, everything kind of comes into play, right? Like every stat, every skill, and so.
Yeah, I mean, like you can have an encounter that tests their dexterity by having like a ledge that they have to cross,
Mm-hmm.
and there should be ways that they can bypass it if they're smart enough to do so.
Right.
If they can think of a good plan to bypass it, that should be with all encounters. We should reward them for doing so. Like the ledge for dexterity, or maybe they have to climb something for strength, or constitution. Maybe they have to wade through a pool of acid. Go all Dante's Peak on them.
Write that down for me.
Walk through a room of spellfire.
Yeah, that's right.
Like there's many different things that you can do.
I'm gonna go back a second and answer a question of yours again. I talked about the Denarians. When I told you guys before that my favorite setting was Birthright, and Birthright is where I got the concept for the Blooded, and I made several Blooded Scions, as they're called, that I was a pretty big fan of. But as a race, as a whole, I would still say the Denarian. But specific monsters, there was a Mind Flayer I used named Falama. And he was really cool because he wasn't really a bad guy. He was just a major inconvenience. Like, he actually described himself. They didn't really talk, but when he finally spoke in the end, the players actually never really encountered him. They never really fought him. They just kind of thwarted his plans by luck in the end. But his basic explanation was the way tomb raiders go through tombs and adventurers dig through dungeons is the way I see your world. Basically explained, I see your world as a dungeon, and I'm just here to grab the stuff I need so I can go. And the stuff he needed just happened to affect areas of the world, right? Mm-hmm. So he was a really cool single boss. He wasn't killed. But I still say the Denarian. But as far as favorite monsters, the Blooded, the Unchinglions, the Unchinglions as a whole, which are the blooded creatures who could not keep control of their blood.
Friggin' monsters.
So they go monster. So they're one of my favorites, and the Denarian are one of my favorites. The Denarian probably are my favorite because they're pretty universal. And guys, make sure when you're creating stuff that it's kind of on par with with D&D, right? So every time someone creates something, they want to create the super powerful stuff because they're spending all this time. They want it to be cool, uber, and powerful. When in reality, if you want to use it more often than not, you want it to the low to midway, like 5 to 8 range. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Just like when creating anything, when creating anything in the game, err on the side of caution. If you're unsure of a balance, make it underpowered.
There you go.
I mean, that's the best way to do it. Make it underpowered. Send it at your party. Oh, they beat it too easy. Let's bump it up a little bit.
There you go.
For next time,
because you can't really reverse it, right? Like you can't go, oh, I accidentally TPK'd my party. Let me next time I'll tone them down.
Yeah.
So one thing I actually just remembered, and I want to touch on this, guys, because I think it's very, very important. It was a huge deal in 4th edition, and it needs to be addressed, so you don't have these things wrecking your battlefield. So if you noticed in the beta form, the fighter ability Second Wind used to give you temp HP, and now it actually heals you, right?
Right.
Yeah, and that was so that it was supposed to be in the middle of a battle, you gain extra strength, but you don't heal yourself. You are stronger for the fight, but after the fight, you're still down.
So the point is, they minimized the things that gave you temp HP. Mm-hmm. The reason why is because that's kind of something the Warlock does. The Warlock is one of the things that actually still focuses on temp HP. So you need to read and double check, and it actually explicitly explains how temp HP lasts and what it is. So one of the questions I saw on the feedback forum, Dungeons & Dragons feedback forum page on Facebook was, this wasn't directed to us, but it was one of the pages. The question was, so do Warlocks just own the battlefield because they can cast the invocation False Life on themselves 100 times and have 400 temp HP going in any fight? No. Mm-mm. They can cast it. Let's just say in this example, their max temp HP per cast is 4. That means the most they can have is 4. If they cast it again, the first one goes away. They can't have 100 of those up. Even though it's cast at will, it's cast once on them. It can only be applied once. It's kind of like saying, well, Corey is a sorcerer and John is a wizard, and they both cast mage armor on me. So how much does that stack for my armor?
It doesn't.
It doesn't.
Once.
It doesn't. Temp HP is the same way. Unless you're getting temp HP specifically from 2 sources and it says it stacks, it doesn't stack. So there's a boon for one of the Warlocks that says when you drop a baddie, you get temp HP, right? Mm-hmm. Let's just say, for sake of argument, that number is 5. Okay? If that number is 5, every time you drop a baddie, you get temp HP. And let's say that I get hit, I kill one of the bad guys, I get 5 temp HP. Well, let's say that Corey hits me with a spell because he's trying to kill me and does 3 damage to me. Well, let's say I kill Corey. I've earned 5 more temp HP plus the 2 temp HP I had previously remaining. So now I have a combined total of 5 temp HP because that's my max. Mm-hmm. I have 56 hit points and I take 6 damage, and now I'm at 50. And Alvis the Life Cleric kills me for 32. I'm not at 82, I'm at 56. That is your max HP gain, or max temp HP. So otherwise you'd have Warlocks running around killing squirrels and saying, I'm God. I swear that squirrel is my enemy. 5 HP, 5 HP. Okay, I got 2,000 HP. I'm ready to fight God. You know, and so I don't really know how that wasn't clear. I think that Mike Merles and the guys at 5th edition made temp HP pretty clear, right?
Yeah, mm-hmm. and it does last until you rest.
Yeah. Short rest, right?
Yeah, when you rest, it goes away.
Rest or short rest. Given how often we have short rests in our game, it's there for a day.
Well, you get short rest.
We get a short rest every once in a while, but it's usually interrupted.
And with like fighters, their temp HP got taken away, I think, mainly because it didn't play out like they want. Like they intended Second Wind to be like, oh, I'm taking all this damage. Here's a quick burst of some HP so I can do some more damage. And it ended up being, well, this is temp HP, so I'm just going to cast it first round in combat every time.
Yeah.
And just add on to my total HP. So it really didn't fit thematically with what they were intending
exactly.
it to be.
Last thing, guys, we got a few more minutes. We'll probably have to touch base more on it next time, but exciting news. 5th edition just released. I don't know. I think it's actually out in hardcover April 7th. May actually be out now.
It's out now for the selected stores.
The selected stores actually have it now. It's the Princes of the Apocalypse.
It is the elemental evil, it's not exactly elemental evil, but it's
It's
inspired by Elemental Evil.
It's another dungeon. It's another module for 5th edition that's built for 5th edition by 5th edition. So I actually have the PDF of it. I plan on picking up the module relatively soon. I think you guys should do the same. It's even like me, I don't really run modules a lot. I like to create my own, but there's a lot of good information that you can use in your homebrew games. NPCs, new monsters, ideas, room descriptions, dungeons. And maybe one day you want to run the module, right? It's good to have. So go run out and get Princes of the Apocalypse and support Dungeons and Dragons, right? So you want to support it. You want it to stay around. You want there to continue to build stuff. You have to give them a reason. So go out and support it and pay the extra money. It shouldn't be that much. They gave you Companion's Guide for free.
Yeah, I mean, they're intentionally having less releases to make it not so harsh on your budget. Because like with the older editions, they said a problem was they just had all these constant releases.
Right.
And there was so much shit to buy, nobody could afford it all, and there's all these different rules. They're doing much more limited releases for that reason, so that everybody has the opportunity to buy it, play through it, experience it before having to feel like, oh shit, this next one came out, now I have to rush through this one.
So go out and get it. Support Dungeons and Dragons. Support geekdom. Support your nerd people.
Keep our hobby alive.
Again, I thought it was really cool that they gave the Companion's Guide PDF out for free. That was really cool. A bunch of new races, stuff like that. This is the newest module. Every book 5th edition has released. I have Wrath of Asharlan and The Legend of Dritz. I just need Castle Ravenloft, and I'll have the board games too. And I actually buy those for the pieces, not really to play the game. I buy them for the pieces. It's cheaper that way.
It is.
It's cheaper. You're a lot better off. You get extra pieces, tiles, all this stuff, all these figurines. For about $60, $50, right? So
as opposed to buying one character for $30.
$13.99, $12. You can get some for $1 or $2 here with shipping. You're just better off buying things in bulk. I even bought the Conquest of Nerath, the war game for D&D, for pieces.
Right, and be sure to obviously check the Wizard site. Every month they do Unearthed Arcana, where they release kind of some. Like last month they did Mass Combat. They just released the undead template, or the undead class.
Soulbound. I think it's a template. I downloaded it. I don't know. I think it's a
template. You posted it on Facebook.
It's a full class. It's a full class, I think. Yeah.
Is it I thought it was like a almost like an archetype of something.
I think I'm pretty sure. I don't think it's a. I don't think it's a class because it gives you stat bonuses.
Well, yeah, so do classes. It gives you the same stat bonuses as classes, and like it says you don't age, but then on the flip side, you take like what he said. You reverse
damage. Yeah. You get hurt by healing. You get healed by necrotic.
They're called Soulbound. They're actually using the old picture from the Avenger from 4th edition, which was cool. The Avenger was actually a really cool class. But guys, I think that's gonna be it for us today.
Yeah, remember, like, subscribe, send us your cool stuff. We can look over, and we'll try and get it in our first PDF that's gonna come out soon.
Tabletop RPG No at
gmail.com.
I guess for our first volume, we'll probably go another 2 weeks. Guys, there's a good chance I'll have someone in place of me in the next 2 weeks. I may or may not be here. The show will go on. Show must go on. Maybe I'll have John here in my place, and then you'll have two. Actually, I wouldn't tune in if you have two players.
2 greenhorns.
No, 2 green players. No dungeon. That's not a game.
Well, hey.
That's not a.
Hey, I have DM'd a couple games.
All I'm saying is if you have 4 players in a DM and 1 player misses, the game can continue. DM misses, game's over.
Yeah.
Who's more important?
DM.
Elvis. He's momentarily Elvis. But guys, that's going to be it for us today. Like, subscribe, send us your submissions. We'll have that volume 1. It's free. Just send us an email or give us some information on the site. Leave a comment. Let us know what you like, what you want. If you want the PDF that we're gonna build for you, and we'll get it out to you.
All right.
That's it, guys.
Yep.
Till next time.
Till next time, may all your rolls be nat 20s. And all DMs roll nat 1s. Please. Your players deserve it.
Do not abuse Chessex like that. See you guys.